The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. Man, I'm excited about today's show because this is a show that we get asked about literally all the time. I'm here with my colleague, business partner, friend, Michael White. Hey, Mike, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Dude, this is going to be a really good show because we're going to talk specifically about brand building versus direct response. And I know you get asked these questions constantly, as I do as well. And a number of our strategists at Splash Omnimedia get asked this question. You know, when people are talking about advertising, there's a major difference between, I call it yesterday, which means everything that happened in the past, right? To today, which means not only today, but probably in the near future. But today's marketing and advertising. And so there's just a major difference, you know, mainly the internet. That really changed the game. That changed the game, completely, as well as smart devices and just a ton of just technology just completely changed the game of how you do that, right? I mean, Mike, what would you say to the most important thing of yesterday's quote unquote marketing and advertising was?
Well, you know, one thing that I think is consistent is brand building is still long-term strategy, the thing that's going to build the most successful businesses that have sustainable growth. But direct response has really emerged to become a much more accessible, quick win than it was in the past, really due to all this technology.
But wouldn't you say that in the past, you know, yesterday, again, not yesterday as in not only yesterday technically, but yesterday theoretically, that the Yellow Pages probably was the number one thing that
back
existed?
in the 90s,
right?
Sure, and before that,
yeah,
and even in the early 2000s, and it began to transition.
And there's still some places geographically today that the Yellow Pages is a good tactic, right? Because of just the ruralness of some, consumers,
right?
Depending on where your business is, there's still a lot of rural America. And so in rural America, Yellow Pages, and a certain demographic too, certain age, what they were used to doing, how they were used to doing it. But even that demographic has adopted and moved towards the internet for a large part, if you would, at least, right? And so, but the Yellow Pages was all about branding. I mean, right, because it wasn't a scenario where you couldn't put like a call today for this special that expires next week because that ad isn't changing next week.
Right. It was just being in a certain place in the Yellow Pages, buying the biggest ad or being in the best position, within the book or on the cover or in the inside of the cover.
And that's where a lot of business names came from, right?
Right.
AA, so-and-so, AAA, quadruple A, 5A, then they got into the ones A1, right? And so a lot of businesses there's some businesses today that still go off that theory, which really cracks me up because the phone book is really not that relative today, especially when it comes to naming your business.
Right, exactly.
I mean, naming a business, Mike, what would you say is, and I know this is just a little part of branding, the overall brand is not directly related to our show that we're going to dive into in just a second, but I mean, what do you think about when it comes to actually naming a business? Not necessarily the graphic or the logo associated with it, which both of those things, the name, the graphic, the tagline, all that creates a brand, right? Color scheme, color palette, whether you have mascots or so on and so forth, all of that is a brand. But when it comes to simply naming a business, what's the mindset there? What's important for naming?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the business's future goal is. So they have to have some vision. What we see happen, Matt, is you and I see people over localize their brand.
Yeah.
So for instance,
they almost limit it themselves.
Yeah,
right?
they localize it by maybe there's something to do with their state or maybe even their local area.
Right.
And so if they have no intention of ever growing beyond that geographic area, that's okay.
Right.
And so a lot of times it really depends on how far they intend to reach. Do they need to be able to trademark this business name?
Right.
So then they're going to have to go through a process to make sure that whatever that name is truly available. Who is their audience? Are they going to build a lot of brand awareness? Are they going to invest to build that awareness on a national, international level? If so, they can they can make up the name. I mean, they can make up a word that's never existed.
Right. And there's a bunch of businesses that we know very well with names that we don't know what it means or have anything to do with anything, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And then if they're going to stay, state or more local, then, it's really, in some cases, if they're going to have a limited budget long term, it's wise to maybe have some indication of what it is your business does within the name or at least within a tagline.
Right. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. No doubt. I mean, you look at, businesses like Wayfair, that's what does Wayfair mean, right? I mean, there's a bunch of things like that that's out there that businesses were just named, and you have no idea but what happened is they spent a ton of money branding it in our minds.
That's right.
Right. And then
it doesn't matter what it's called.
Right. And of course, a business like that, which is, all an online business, which again, we were talking about online tactics, right? The tactic of being just digital. When you look at things like that, then what ends up happening is everywhere you go, you see Wayfair, whether you're on social media, whether you're on, search media, no matter what, right? And so they have the ability to brand what their name is and what it means to us as a consumer, right?
That's right.
And so I love that.
And they do a great job of identifying who their target audience is and being visible in those areas. And that's brand building. So branding and direct response, in some cases they come together. They definitely complement each other. But it's a little different in that the ultimate goal with brand building is simply that, to just build top of mind awareness, to inform to what your cause is, what your mission is, what product services you offer, how you can relieve whatever pain your audience is having. And it's not with the expectation of measuring an ROI on the short term.
Yeah. So when we talk about branding, we're not talking about it in a negative way.
Oh no.
It's vital. It's part of, if not the main part of your long-term growth, your long-term success rate. What we're just saying is you can't say I want direct response and the only thing you are doing is branding, right? And so we're going to really break down both direct response and branding campaigns for you here today in the show, Mike. But I know that it used to be where you had the ability to simply say, hey, here's who I am. Here's my type of business. If you want that type of business, here's who I am. Come buy it from me or come consume it from me, right? And it's just not enough today. Like, you have to give people the reason why to do business with you and how it's going to fill the hole or the void in which that consumer has.
That's right.
Right? And I know you talk about that quite a bit in your strategy meeting. So, I mean, it's important.
It really is. It's evolved is what's happened. It's just the simplicity of the message in the past was just, hey, if I can buy more advertising space, if I could buy more TV time, more newspaper space, bigger ads in the yellow pages, more direct mail in people's mailboxes, then ultimately you'd win.
Right.
But today that's just not necessarily the case, because they'll just tune you out.
Is that something that we kind of battle against? I mean, what happens is a lot of people are out there doing one and not the other. And then they're wondering if all they're doing is direct response. They're wondering why they have these ebb and flows, these ups and downs, and then their long-term success is really kind of stagnant. It's not consistent growth when you look at your financials year over year. And then a lot of people are out there just doing brand building, and then they're wondering why they don't have these influxes of good days where you have a significant amount of sales or cash, but they have a mediocre, consistent year-over-year sales. But we both know that when the economy is good, like it has been over the last 3.5 or 4 years, on a fairly consistent basis, again with some ebbs and flows, then you have these abilities to really take in a significant amount of cash by offering incentives, which is that direct response goal in marketing. Mike, I know you deal a lot with this on the brand building versus direct response, because that's one of the most common questions some business models have. In fact, probably most business models have it sooner or later. And so, talk to me, Mike, about just the long-term growth strategy, the goal versus that direct response, if you will.
Yeah, so really the ultimate goal for all of it is to eventually drive an action, to get people to take an action and buy your products, and then buy them again and buy more of them and tell their friends, and do it for a very long time.
That's right.
So that's ultimately the goal. Some people are, and again, it differs, by industry and by your individual business, but some people are in a position where they are much closer to a buying decision or a buying need. Their pain is much higher. So if it's an HVAC contractor and it's July, or June or July, and it breaks, it's probably, and you're in the South, it's probably an opportunity to from a direct response, get someone to take an immediate action.
That's right. So even if you haven't been doing any overall or long-lasting branding, some direct response in the right spots at the right time can certainly get you there.
Right. So someone goes to Google and they search for, air condition repair, home air condition repair, HVAC service. You want to show up. But from a brand building perspective, ideally what's happening is you're building your brand in front of that audience long before their need arises.
Right.
So therefore, they don't even go to Google to search, because they already have your name in mind. They've looked at reviews in the past. They've seen, other content that you've provided them across social media, billboards, vehicle wraps, whatever it is.
Yeah, you've given them something that resonates with them long term, some type of message. Or, that's where jingles come in, man. Jingles are really good, because what happens is that just replays it. If it's catchy, and most jingles are, it catches on, it resonates with you over long term. But messages as well, like if something really resonates, if you're showing imagery that's very close to what your environment looks like, right? And so if you do that, then it resonates with you.
Right.
I know that there was an advertising campaign, and there was this auto dealer, I don't know if it was a manufacturer or a dealer, out in the Northwest somewhere, that did this dynamic billboard campaign, where the billboard campaign had a camera on the billboard, and it automatically was able to match up what type of car you were driving, and then it would show that type of car with a message.
Okay.
And when you were driving that car, you see your car up there, your make and model, and you're going to remember that.
Right.
And so long term, and there was no direct response message. It was long term branding from this particular thing, because they did it over time, and they watched a methodical, slow paced growth. But when you look back over, say, a 6-month or an 8-month window, then you saw a significant growth from month 1 to the end month of the campaign.
Makes sense.
Right? You didn't see these spikes in revenue, but so you have to give a message that truly resonates with, your consumer, whoever that is.
So what you just touched on is being hyper personalized.
Yes.
And so that's what we're finding today, that these generic messages, whether it's brand building or direct response,
right,
if it's generic, you're not going to appeal to many, because there's so much noise. I mean, in a world with an abundance of information, the thing that's become scarce is attention.
Yeah.
Because we are just bombarded with messages everywhere we turn today as consumers. And I don't know that our brains can process all of it. So we only process the things that jump out at us. And so when you make it hyper personalized, you touch on their actual pain point. You personalize it by recognizing the tribe that they're from, the college they attended, the sport that they played, the town that they live in, the boat manufacturing that they own. Whatever it is, it jumps out at them. It's personal, and they connect with it.
And not only does that do very, very well when you can resonate specifically with something that individual viewer or searcher, whatever you have, they can picture themselves living in that environment because you're showing it to them, right? And it's already one that they're used to because they're living in it. Not only is that happening, but I know that other things are happening as well, because what's happening is you're referring business to them, because if you like it, then more than likely the people you hang around like it, because people hang around with people really just like them.
Birds of a feather flock together.
Exactly. That's why lookalike marketing works very, very well. And all we need is an email address. But where I was going with that is, from a digital campaign, it's easy to create dynamic advertisement. And so with dynamic advertisements, what we can do is, based off of what they're searching for or what they're looking for, you can almost stick in that exact thing, right? And
That's right.
I love that. So if you're looking for a car, let me give you some examples, our viewers and listeners, some examples. So if you're looking for, let's say, a Honda Accord, right? And then what happens, we can build dynamic digital advertisements that whatever car you're looking for, we place that car in there, right? Now, obviously, if you're a Chevrolet dealer, you're not going to place a Honda Accord in there. But my point is, if you're a Honda dealer and you're doing dynamic advertisement and you're looking for an Accord, and all of a sudden the Accord shows up.
Right.
If you're looking for a white Accord, then a white Accord shows up, right?
Right.
Same thing with any business owner. We can do that with pretty much any type of product or service. It's not just a product. You can do it with a service as well. And that works very, very well. And you can do that in a branding or in a direct response type of marketing, type of advertising.
I mean, ultimately, you're trying to just drive awareness enough that eventually they'll take an action. So where we see people go wrong is they're approaching advertising and they're doing more of a brand building campaign or campaigns, but they're looking for more of direct response results. So it's a lack of patience on the brand building side. So when you're building brand, and the reality is all of us should be doing it. If you're in business and you plan on being in business for more than the next couple of days,
right.
Especially if you plan to be in business for an infinite period of time, for many years to come, then you should be building your brand and knowing that the seeds you plant today may pay off tomorrow. They may pay off 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 6 years down the road.
Right.
But it's still a strong investment in your business, and it will pay off. But you have to have some patience and recognize that when you're doing brand building activities, you got to remember that you're not going to be able to quantify or measure the actual ROI on that as quickly. You'll measure it long term.
That's a really, really good point, because, for instance, in direct response marketing, as opposed to overall brand marketing over time, brand advertising over time, is when you don't have something to sell today, then there's no one going to do business with you today, because you don't have that brand acceptance in the marketplace. Right. And so it's almost like you can't ever let off the gas. You can't ever stop putting a new message out there. You can't ever stop creating a new offer if all you're doing is creating direct response messages. So, for instance, direct response messages would be things like call now, right? The first 100 callers, right? There's a limited time on this product or this service. You get a percentage off. And so that's how you identify, of course.
It's just a strong call to action.
Right. It's something that needs to happen immediately. Right. And so we can generate cash immediately. But when you don't have those offers, all of a sudden, you're not there anymore.
So one thing that, to frame it up, because a lot of small businesses in particular are created by people who probably have a knack for sales at some level. They may be good at what they do, like whatever the offer is, like whatever their business is actually based on, but they're usually outgoing, kind of sales-oriented individuals who grow a small business. So to compare the two, brand building is like relationship development. It's out networking, it's building your social influence, it's building rapport, building visibility and relationships. And you do that by spending time with people, being visible, showing up, adding value to the conversation. It's not always asking someone to do business with you right now. Now, in a lot of cases, you make yourself visible and help your audience understand what you do, in hopes and understanding that eventually people will do business with those they know, like, and trust. On the flip side to that, direct response is more like buying leads. So direct response is, hey, you need to get more business, You do more direct response advertising, you drive more opportunities.
Looking at it. That's a really good way of looking at it, no doubt about it. Branding, again, guys, for those that are listening and viewing, branding is something that you absolutely have to do. And direct response is something that you absolutely need to do at the same time. You need to have some direct response offers and messages. You need to have some branding offers and messages. And then you're creating short-term revenue and you're creating long-term growth. And so when you're doing both of those simultaneously, it really works. Mike, I know that one strategy is not the most success strategy out there, and that simply is having hope. Hope is a really good emotion to have. There's no doubt about it. Matter of fact, you want to start your day with hope, but you need to have actually some tactical decisions. You need to have something that you're going to execute on, because hope is not a strategy. You can't sit back and say, well, I hope this year is as good as last year, or I hope next year is as good as this year. I mean,
while you sit on the couch.
While you sit on the couch and just continue to do the same thing. Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you that this year will not be as good as last year if all you do is the same thing.
That's right.
Right? It won't even be as good. It certainly is not going to be better.
Yeah.
But it won't even be as good. You know why? Because now there's competitors doing it. Right? There's some people that's hunting you down if you're in the lead. If you're not in the lead, well, then you're already not being as successful as you can be. So branding is something that you absolutely have a strategy on, and then direct response is one as well. And you need to have budgets for both, and you can't play one against the other.
Yeah.
It's two different things working.
Yeah, they work hand in hand. And individually, they will get you results, but together, I mean, exponentially better results.
Good point.
And so I'll give an example. So in a previous show, I think last year, we talked about the buyer shopping journey. I think it was near the holiday season, and I shared an example from a website called justbats.com, and that's a little plug for them. They are not our client, but they should be. They would be even better.
That's right.
But
Unsolicited commercial.
Yeah. So justbats.com recognized via kind of my profile, my search history, my social media history, that I have some boys at home and that play baseball, and they have served me really more brand, awareness ads across different digital properties.
Right.
And so it would be, hey, we've got the latest Easton bat, or the latest, Rawlings bat, or whatever. And eventually I clicked on one of those ads. Once I did that and began to look at a few things on their website, their approach immediately changed. So it went from a brand building strategy, and it triggered them to begin to do more direct response advertising to me. So they started to have more pointed ads that, based on what I was searching, it recognized around the age group that I may have been searching for and the brand that I appeared to have some preference toward.
Right.
And it began to serve me ads that were relevant to that. And the more I engaged, the more specific the ads became. And over time, they began to serve me ads with a discount code.
Yeah,
so they were looking for
right.
anything they can to get me to take an action.
An action.
And then I didn't take an action on buying, but I did click back through because it intrigued me, and I wanted to see how far down the rabbit trail they would take me. And eventually it drove me to something that I had really no interest in initially, but it was so compelling that it convinced me to provide my email address to access this guide.
Right.
That would be helpful it promised to be helpful for me as a dad helping my son with his baseball game.
Right. And for our viewers and listeners, really key in on this process. This isn't like Mike didn't see an ad, buy the bat. Right?
That's right.
Understand that we're on a number of different initiatives now, right? We're on this process or a workflow, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so these people, Just Bats, whoever's doing their marketing, has thought through the buyer's journey and has thought through an entire workflow process and has got Mike working through it. Someone who actually does this for a living, they got him working through this process.
That's exactly right.
So keep on with the story.
So they get me to, provide my email address so I can get access to this valuable tool that's going to help me be a better dad, which is the emotion that's really pulling, and help my son be a better baseball player, which brings joy to me as a dad and to him as my son, and keeps my wife happy as well. So I end up providing the email address. I immediately get sent via email this resource. And it was pretty good. That if it wasn't, I probably wouldn't share this. But it was a pretty good resource, and it gave some immediate gratification, which is important. So they gave me some value in exchange for something that they found valuable, which is my contact information at another level. So then over the course of the next 30 days, I received a series of emails while I was also being retargeted by their brand on social media. And again, with highly relevant messages based on my last interactions. Now, because I wasn't in the market to buy a bat right now, as my interactions decreased, I stopped clicking. I noticed that over time they backed off in the frequency of their messaging, and it kind of transitioned back to more brand building. Because I think that they had the intuition built into into the journey to recognize, okay, this person is not necessarily ready to harvest today, to convert, but we need to keep them in our mechanism. And so I now get emails less frequently from them, but they're still staying front and center. And here we are. I haven't bought a bat from them in a long time at this point, and yet they're still staying in touch, but it's more brand building again.
So there was a mixture between direct response and call to actions and just overall branding, all involved in the same customer, you.
That's right.
Right? And so you remember all of that, not just because you're a marketer, but because of the experience.
That's right.
But not only do you remember the experience, you also are picturing if you had to go buy a bat, they have branded their process and how good they are in working with their customers. That's part of the brand. See, it's not just the logo or the graphic or the message, right? It's everything about you. It's what you stand for. It's who you are. It's why you do what you do. The Simon Sinek thing, right? And so start with your why. Inside out, right? And so people don't necessarily buy into what you have or even how you do it. People buy into why you do it.
That's right.
And so now look at what they've done here with Mike in the Just Bat scenario. The why they did it, right? There was one resource that you put a lot of weight into of how to be a better father to your son by providing this bat.
So they hit me on the emotion side, which is where all buying decisions actually take place.
And that's probably the thing. I mean, I wasn't walking through it with you, but that was probably the thing that
made them stand out.
That pushed you over the edge of taking action.
Had I just opened that resource and it been garbage, if it had just tried to sell me on buying a bat right then, it would have probably left a different perception of their brand. But now I have a very positive perception of their brand because they have in some way added value to me, and now they are a trustworthy brand based on that. To me, at this point in time. So, again, not trying to give them more plugs than they need, but that's just the process that transpired, and it really shows. See, I would have never had the opportunity, most likely, to have gone through that process and click through and access that guide and been added to their email list and into their CRM, customer relationship management software, had they not invested in the brand building side first.
Up front, right, and they did that. And then not only did they do that, but they also invested a significant amount of time in figuring out the buyer's journey up front, because they had that workflow created that if you as a customer does this, then we as a business do this, or we send them this email, or we send them this ad, or we give them this resource. And so it was this big, long if-then statement. And that's one of the things I know you and I both, Mike, love helping our customers do. We love helping our clients create impactful workflows that then enables their salespeople, right, whoever their salespeople are, whether it's 1 or 100, allows their salespeople to work much smarter than harder, and allows them to simply spend their time talking to people and corresponding with people who are actually already shown interest in doing business with them.
That's right.
There's an amazing difference when your salespeople can stop calling on people that have 0 or at least less than 10% interest and start talking to the people that are about 90% interested in their product or service. Here's just a couple of do's. The first is allow budgeting for both. Allow budgeting for branding and brand building and brand advertising, and allow budget for direct response. In the branding part, focus on the values. Focus on the values of your company, the values of what your product is or your service is. It's not just about a product offering. This could be a service-based business just as easy. Roofing and other things of that nature. I mean, there's a bunch of services out there. And then go ahead and start. I mean, let's get started. You don't have to. Some of the don'ts is you don't have to focus on the small details. In branding, what you're doing is you're looking at big picture. You can do things like your jingle, your messages, your taglines, mascots. I mean, what you're doing is just focusing on your overall big picture message, and you're making sure that the right people are seeing it all the time.
That's right. Your vehicle wraps, your email signatures.
Absolutely.
It's not just the people that you're trying to reach for the first time. It's the people even that you've reached over and over again, and maybe you've done business with in the past.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people competing for their attention, not just people competing with you. They're competing for your audience's attention, and they only have so much they can remember. So you've got to be remarkable.
No doubt.
Stand out.
Another don't, Mike, as you know, from a branding versus direct response, you can actually look month over month in revenue and ROI. In branding, you actually don't want to look month over month. You look year over year for ROI. So don't just focus on just ROI. Focus on how your business's reputation is going, how your overall efforts are going from a communication perspective, just some processes, how your employees and your culture is doing. But overall, really, what is the community in which you market? And that could be nationally, it could be worldwide, or that could just be one city or one town or one geographic area, how the overall community that you market is feeling about your product, and some surveys and things of that nature.
So that's a great point, Matt. So on the direct response side, you can measure click-throughs, you can measure cost per lead, cost per acquisition. That means a conversion, how much does it cost to actually get the customer to convert. Lots of metrics there on that side. The metrics that you're going to measure for brand building are going to be more impressions, like how many times the brand gets seen, how many followers you have on various social channels, or if you're on YouTube, how many subscribers, if you're on radio, how many listeners, how many mailboxes did you hit with direct mail. I mean, you could literally go on and on about a little bit different measurement approach when it comes to brand building. I mean, it's that's measuring how many people are engaging and seeing your brand is an indicator of the opportunities that will exist in the future. Where on the direct response side, it's much more measuring the cost and the outcomes.
You have to have a healthy combination of both, which is exactly what you're saying. And I'm going to tell you that the people that are doing real well, we have one client, they've been on our show before, and I know that we, over a 3-year period of time, and we have budget going to branding and we have budget going to direct sales. And over that 3-year period of time, we took them from about $1.5 million to right around $8.5 to $9 million in 3 years. Now you're talking about a small business, and now they're more of a medium-sized business, and we have aspirations to take them to another 10 times in growth, if not more. And so that's because that business owner understood, and he got it, he gets it, and he sees the value in year-over-year revenue branding versus day-over-day, month-over-month, quarter-over-quarter direct sales and direct responses type of marketing and advertising. It truly works. Mike, there's people out there, there's businesses out there that have to market and have to advertise themselves, right? And I keep using the terms marketing and advertising synonymously. In another show, they are definitely different. In another show, we'll break down the difference between marketing and advertising. Go to thebrainstormradio.com, subscribe to our podcast, watch our webisodes, and we will break down all kinds of things. Contact us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. But Mike, in the world of advertising, right, there's some business and some industries. Earlier, I gave an example about some like auto dealers, right? Give me an example of what we're talking about and put it in application today using an example such as car dealers.
Okay, so let's say that you're a BMW dealer and you are targeting your local market using traditional advertising, television, billboards, magazine, ads, things like that. So you build your brand there.
All traditional offline stuff.
I'm not saying that's the only place. Right. I'm just using this as an example.
Right, as an example.
So your message is going to be about the new 5 Series or 7 Series or the newest SUV they're offering. And you may even have like a lease rate that's on the billboard. This could be pretty simple. Or you may have a message on television that just shows what it looks like to be the proud owner of a new BMW. So what that after looks like you're going to feel good about yourself, you're going to have fun, your drive to work is going to be exhilarating, whatever. So from there, what they're doing is they're trying to build brand awareness. And what we know that consumers do today is people use multiple medias at the same time. So let's say someone's sitting and watching that television commercial, and maybe they're pretty close to being in the market for a new car, coincidentally. So they go to their phone and they search, 5 Series BMW, if that's what the article was on, the ad was on. And now they land on their website.
Right.
And now they're looking at those vehicles. And maybe they go from the 5 and determine, that's a little bit overpriced for me. So they maybe go to the 3 Series. Well, now they will begin to digitally receive advertising that's highly personalized based on the fact that now they've gone and begun to search 3 Series BMWs.
Right.
And over time, they will transition them as they interact into more of a direct response approach where they're going to offer an incentive, a lease incentive, a skip a payment or no down payment, whatever it takes to get that audience into action. And that's how those two things really work hand in hand. Had they not reached them through the brand awareness stage, using that traditional advertising, they would have never captured them or unlikely to capture them, and move them into action.
Yeah.
So they work hand in hand.
I love that. I love that example. And that is the perfect advertising strategy. And so when you tie those two things together, it just simply works very, very well. Direct response is something that you absolutely have to do in order to generate those big wins. Again, if you're in sales or if you have sales folks that works for you, they're looking for those wins from day to day and week to week, month to month, right? And you have to have those. You definitely have to have those, right? Every business has to have those. But what you're really wanting to do is just have a good branding campaign that correlates and corresponds and works together, like your examples with the Just Bat, your examples with the BMW, two completely different things, right? Of course, I know some of those baseball bats probably feel like they cost about as much as a BMW, right?
Yes.
Sometimes. Yes. And so I didn't have any boys, and you have a basketball team worth of boys, and so full of boys. And so you bought a lot more baseball bats than I did, but hanging out with you, you've told me how expensive some of those baseball bats are.
It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, so I know, but it's still a very different scenario. But if you see one thing that's consistent, what they did is they use branding campaigns to drive the overall brand and the overall theory and overall concept of buying buying that product or service or buying even that specific brand. And then they drove you into a direct response offering with incentives to take action immediately scenario.
That's right.
That's a good strategy, man. That is a good strategy. Hey, thanks for listening and joining us and watching us today on The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. What we'd love for you to do is go to thebrainstormradio.com, check us out there. You can subscribe to our podcast. You can go over and watch our webisodes on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe there too. And we would love for you to engage with us, man. We have a ton of experience doing this. We opened Splash Omnimedia over 15 years ago. about 450 clients, successful with over a 90% retention rate. Our business has been blessed, but we live, breathe, eat, and sleep this stuff. This is all we study. This is all we do. We absolutely love helping businesses grow their business. Thanks for engaging with us at thebrainstormradio.com. This is the Brainstorm Radio with Matt and Mike. Until next time, have a great week.